motivation today, but using trauma and stuff that you went through when you were younger as motivation. I think a lot of what with him, I've always used as something trying to prove people wrong. And with him, he's never had approval, even regardless of how successful I've ever been or what I've done in my life. He's never had approval with any of that. And so I've always had to strive to be, or try to get his approval.
Yeah.
Wow, that's hard.
So, yeah.
When it's really eye-opening when you recognize those kinds of things, right? Like why you're doing things so much and trying so hard on things, and you're like, why do I keep doing this? And when you have that kind of like realization of like, oh shit, this like most of our ego and what we go through and what we're trying to achieve, all of that stems from some kind of childhood trauma or some kind of trauma that we're trying to somehow get rid of and do it. We're trying to like make something that we don't like into something more, you know, of like trying to seek that approval of like, this is why I'm doing it. And I know like for me, like kind of going back what you're saying, like a big why for me when I was younger, like I was a terrible kid. Like I was either going to be homeless or like a drug addict was what my parents thought. Cause I had pretty much, if you told me no on something, I would find a way to do it. I like would ditch school. I had like 37 truancies at one time. I've been arrested multiple times. Like there was a lot. So for me, getting like in a professional setting, I was like, I have to prove people wrong. Like exactly what you said. It was like, I had this like innate feeling of like, I have to show people that I am not what they thought that I was. And for me, when it gets down deeper and deeper in that why, it's like, fuck, it all stems from my childhood of like not being good enough for my parents and not being able to show up for them because I was like, wanted to be the badass or be like, you know, the kid that ditched school and smoked weed out by the like playground or whatever at like 13 years old. And my parents were great parents and they were like, where the fuck did this come from? Like how, and it comes from like, I had a younger sister who started getting all the attention and I had that kind of like middle child syndrome. And I always was trying to prove people something different of what they thought.
Well, I think that drives you for a long time.
Does.
It did me. It was like a neutron bomb in my chest and solar plexus that just drove me to prove to my brothers, prove to my dad that I was worthy and get that validation. And then, but I'm 48 now. I can look back and I can forgive that guy. I can forgive, like, you know, like Rob Dial talks about, you wear a shirt, like the not good enough shirt, or I'm too fat, or I'm not good looking enough, I'm not smart enough. These things that people label on us, and then we walk around the rest of our lives with this shirt on. Well, that shirt doesn't fit me anymore, and I can forgive myself. I can forgive myself for those things and say, look, that version of Ryan was doing the best he could with the resources he had at that time, but that is no longer. And I don't need that validation anymore. And I find different things to drive me. You know what I mean? And like, you're not that kid anymore.
No,
you know,
no,
I mean,
we're
sure
so
that you've
far from it.
surpassed and evolved into what you are today. And then we'll evolve into something else, you know? And I think very few people can look at the man in the glass or the woman in the glass and say, and see what's there and address the trauma and then let it go.
Yeah.
The letting go, the surrendering is the hardest part.
You know, sometimes I think using it, because I was the same as you. I got caught smoking weed at school. My mom kicked me out of the house. I actually had to go live with my dad in high school for
I knew I liked you.
a few years. So like there was a lot of that too. And I was an only child, but it came from like my mom. I had a stepdad growing up as well. So I'm sure it had a lot to do with just proving myself in a different way. But I think now, and I can't speak for you, but for me, I just use it as motivation in the business that I do today. And it does become, like you said, taking off that shirt and realizing it at a certain point. And I brought this up because it was literally, we were just talking about this on a podcast recently, and realizing that you're doing those things and having that realization, but then how and when can you let go of that? And that's where I think at some point, like we just have to figure that out on our own of being able to stop wanting to seek approval or, seek approval.
I think it happens in phases too.
It does.
Yeah, and
It's not like one day you wake up, you know.
Yeah, and I think there's a way to flip it too, because for me now, I don't know that it's necessarily I'm searching for all this approval, but it's still like when I think back to who I was or who I used to be, and now I look at who I am, I've completely had a whole 180 change of life, but it's still like that drive when I look back of who I was and who I am now, that's still my drive of like, I would never be that fucking person again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll use that to fuel me to be like, I'm a badass. Like I would never do the things that I did in my past, like of who I am now. So it's like one of those things where it's a double-edged sword almost, because you want to know to look back on it. But I think to have the lens of knowing that you've changed that shirt, you're now a different person, but still using that as some kind of fuel or motivation to be like, I'm a badass. Like I don't take shit from people. But now in a different way, I don't take shit from people.
Well, and I think it keeps you humble too. Like it does. In recovery circles, I'm in recovery and I help a lot of guys. And I go to a lot of meetings and they talk about remembering the starting blocks. Like remember day one and see where you are now. And it keeps you humble, but it keeps it fresh too, because the disease is vicious and waiting to consume you again. But if you stay in practice and see how far you've come, you get to celebrate wins. You get to see, oh my God, like look where I am, look where I was. And that is a motivator right there. But if you don't, but you can still keep it as a driving force, but notice the evolution and really notice and celebrate your victories too.
Yeah.
And then find more to aspire to. It's like that whole thing, fear. It's like, we don't have to be courageous. People think of courage, and I'll have to be this courageous person. I have to step up. You only have to have courage for like 20 seconds to get through the scary thing, right? Whether it's picking up the phone or doing this podcast or walking through the door and doing the appointment. You just need to be courageous for like 20 seconds. And then you're on the other side. You're into action and moving through the scary thing.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're on the other side of the scary thing, right?
Totally
Whether it's a market
Right.
or starting a business or all of that. And just look how far you've come so fast in this endeavor, and I'm sure a lot of it was some scary things,
For sure. Yeah, it was funny when you and I first connected, we were talking about like kind of negativity and using like negative things that have happened in our life to build something. I can think back to every time where I've had some type of breakthrough, a negative event happened first and then I had a breakthrough.
You have to have the breakdown, right, to have the breakthrough. That's what we talk about that a lot.
Yeah. So like when we first met, when I got fired by Ryan, right, he hired me 3 months later because he heard that I was grinding it out, making phone calls, getting deals. And I think back to that time because I don't think I would be where I'm at today if I didn't go through a few of those hiccups. Like I don't think I would still have been in our industry that I was once in. I don't think I would have continued. I probably would have went back to being a realtor or whatever it was. And then would I have been where I'm at today in terms of my investing business? Like a lot of that thing, it's just crazy how those evolutions of things happening.
Thresholds you broke through to show you how strong you really were. And so who knows what's left in the tank. That's the exciting part,
For
right?
sure.
When I feel like so many people don't realize that too, what you said. It's like people have that victimhood mentality, like going back to like being the victim or being the author and being like, yeah, this happened to us and it's shitty, but how do we flip that and make it our story and be like, well, yeah, it's just part of who we are. And so many people want to hold on to the victimhood and not realize that usually after your biggest breakdowns or after I've had a moment of like, holy shit, I'm so done with this, I have that moment of clarity and then I'm breaking through and I'm like, this was the universe having this set up to happen for me. Yeah. And so many people think it happens to us of like, why is this happening to me? But it's happening for us. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's got to be pretty darn painful for a worm to crawl into a cocoon and liquefy itself and emerge a butterfly.
Yeah.
as cliche as it is, it's so true though, right?
Yeah, well, the universe sets up just the amount of adversity that we need to evolve into. And so many people are stopped by that adversity or that fear or the, and pushing through it gives you exactly the skill set to get to the next thing, But if you try, people try to escape it, go around it, under it, over it, but you got to go through it so that when the next thing comes up, you're equipped with the tools that last piece of adversity gave you for this one that's in front of you today. Yeah. And so it's great to see you grow. We're all on this path of growth, But yeah, I'm certain that if you didn't have these difficulties, that adversity that shaped you and hardened you enough to get you to this point, you just wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You'd be doing something else.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that goes for all of us, right? Like your sobriety, right? Like your stuff that you use, like as a kid, using all that as having to prove yourself. I think all of it's really important. Let's talk about some tactile stuff about, we've been talking about motivation or we've been talking about a lot of like proving yourself to people. Let's talk about a little bit like staying, for people in our industry, staying motivated with, circumstances that we can't control, right? We were talking about a little bit of that before we started the podcast. We've been dealing with, elections and things that we can't control in the market. It's probably the slowest our market's been since 2009. I think it's really hard for people to stay optimistic about the future of what we're dealing with and the people that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. What are you guys seeing the successful from the unsuccessful doing?
I mean, what we have seen is the people that show up and focus on their activities and the controllables as it is, right? What are my metrics? What are my outreach metrics that I'm hitting? What are the campaigns I'm doing? Basically focusing on what they can control, their activities, their attitude, their availability, and their actions, right? Focus on the actions. I'm responsible for effort. The universe is responsible for result. And when you try to cross that line and you get anxious really quick because the market, the landscape in real estate in San Diego County and at large can be a little bit negative, can be pretty damn pessimistic, really. Yeah. So when you try to play that game, you can get seized up and anxious and end up doing nothing and paralyzed pretty easily. But if you go to do the reverse and just show to work, whatever the market is, I got to show up and do my job. And my job is, and then have a definition and know what you're doing, know why you're doing it, the results will come. If the little things, if you take care of them, the big things tend to take care of themselves, is what I found. So our people that are doing what they know works and moves the needle, the results are coming.
Yeah, and like Ryan said, it's just staying in action. And so many of our agents and people we're talking to right now are so paralyzed about, the election. And now that's I don't know about you guys, but Ryan and I, for me, like after Wednesday, my phone was blowing up and people were like, all right, what are we doing next? Like what's working, what's not working? We're ready to go back to work now that this is all done. And the one thing that we are telling our agents that we're seeing working is working. Like there's no magic pill right now, and everybody wants to take the course and pay the money and learn all the things and all of a sudden be a millionaire and have all these things, but they miss so many steps and it's about doing the work. And so for us, like on our team, we set up metrics and we just have numbers and we just stick to the numbers and we try not to get emotional because like Ryan said, the results will take care of itself. Sure. And if we just hit our numbers, and for agents that we talk with, it's like, start small, like start with 5 warm calls, like start with people and then have good conversations. And then that builds out to next thing you know, you're like, oh, I busted out 5 calls. I can do another 5. And then you can get to different activities and you can build off of those activities. But how do you know where you're going if you're not doing anything to get that started?
You can't scale up. You can't scale back. When you're off the rails, you can't find your way back. If you don't have a system, like your systems guy, if you can't track metrics, how do you know what's working and then how to scale that up? You don't, because you're not tracking anything. Yeah. So I think it has to do with staying in action and being too busy to observe and be worried about what's going on around you. Literally too busy to care.
Yeah. I love the too busy to care. I think that's a big thing. I mean, I think it's important. Like, I think for me as a real estate investor, I have to pay attention to what's going on in terms of the economy. But if I was to take it from a lens of, because there's been a lot of negative noise, right? A lot of negative media, lots of different, we've had interest rates rise over the last 2 years. We've had the election going on. It's like
wars, COVID. We've lived through some crazy shit, guys.
It's been a lot. And like, how do you just filter out the noise and say, like, don't focus on it, just focus on the goal, And I think that's so important for people to realize is like, you can't just drown yourself in that shit because it's just gonna eat you alive. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys, talking about tactical stuff with your agents, for you guys specifically, because I know you guys are great with tracking metrics. What are the difference? Because I think this would provide a good lens for even other people that are in the industry based on your guys' metrics. When you guys, like during COVID, I know shit was crazy and orders were through the roof. Deals were just coming in nonstop.
I needed to go out.
Yeah. So maybe the metrics during that time weren't good, but let's call it like your calls and meetings before COVID. That was a normal time in the market. What was your guys' average, let's call it a week, look like in terms of calls and meetings?
Well, just to tie a ribbon around that last thought is like, if you focus on the solution expands. If you focus on the problem expands, right? So just keep that in mind. And so the solution is action and work. Yeah. But in terms of our metrics, we try to talk between 20 and 40 calls, usually half and half between nurture and new prospect a day. and about 2 to 3 consults a day, and 1 to 2 leverage events a week, which would be a happy hour, a lunch and learn, a gala, these types of things.
It's the same metrics as when you and I met each other back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you say that. Have they changed since like today?
So in COVID, like you alluded
Yeah.
to, it was a really reactionary
Sure.
because it was just we were drinking from a fire hose
yeah.
in terms of business.
So it was more just like maintaining shit and
Totally
making
get it.
sure that
Making
everything
sure
was
that the whole
good.
thing didn't just erupt, right?
Right.
So we were really reactionary and like maintaining. But now in the growth mode, yeah, it's similar. Some days we make 80 calls.
Right.
Some days we get to 3. We try not to ever have a goose egg just for the purposes of momentum. Once you got the big mo, you want to stick with the big mo. But I think that a lot of DMs, we try to do 10 DMs on the 3 different platforms, IG, LinkedIn, Facebook, and then at least a video a week. I think we do more like 6 a month, and opportunities like this are awesome for more media. Anything I'm missing there? Or?
No, I mean, we're pretty structured. We're very time blocked out. So we're very strict on our morning routines. Like, it's pretty hard to get Ryan and I before like 10 a.m. unless you're a big producer or really need us because we're very strong on our morning routines because we know we have to get ourselves best before we can take that energy onto the phone calls and onto the meetings and onto that. So we are very regimented on our workout routines in the morning, our gratitude routines in the morning, our meditation. Like we know that like I won't talk to him during a certain time. He doesn't text me during a certain time because we're getting our morning routines in. And then we usually huddle at 10 and we kind of go over a game plan. And as soon as we get done with that, we get right into phone calls and start usually nurturing open files, closed files, people on the other side, non-directing clients. Those are really big ones for us because we got like 30 days with them and we're like, hey, we got to convert you in 30 days.
NDC's pull-through ratio's high.
Yeah, and then
he knows all about that.
Yeah, and then we have like usually we have like 3 meetings, consults set every day, and we have specific times for those meetings. So it's like, hey, these are the times we're available to meet, which is really nice because you have to run your business like a business, right?
course.
And so many people are like, oh, well, I have to go run and do this, and I have to go to this, and I have to run to this class, and very reactionary. And it doesn't make you look super professional when you can be super available at all times, right?
Yeah.
The reason why I was asking you guys that is because I know you guys track your metrics. And so for other people that are listening in, regardless, like obviously our audience is probably a lot of realtors, loan officers, whatever it is. The fact that your guys' metrics haven't changed, and that's the reason why it was a loaded question. The fact that your metrics haven't changed when this industry has changed over the last 2, 3, 4 years, every year has been different. We've had different negative things that have impacted the market that has slowed things down. And the fact that your metrics haven't changed, but they've just stayed consistent should give people optimism of it's really just taking those small steps to get yourself to consistency, and that will create results.
I mean, dude, conversations which can stem from messaging, from a voicemail blast, from text campaigns to phone calls, those types of engagements, from social that turn into conversations, that turn into meetings and turn into relationships. And from those relationships, revenue is driven, right? So the whole course of this business, this people business we're in, is getting and collecting relationships and then being such a deep and trust relationship that money comes from it, right? That's the basic game we're playing.
Yeah.
And I think Haley makes a huge point because, I mean, who are you bringing into the day, right? Who are you bringing into those relationships? Who are you bringing into those messages? Are you feeding your mind, your spirit, your body, and getting yourself to your optimal best self? Not ever, but just on Thursday. I'm the best Ryan on Thursday that I can be right now because I've done my morning work.
If we can go from a 2, like, because when I wake up, I'm a 2. Like, I'm not fist pumping to be at the gym at 6 in the morning. It's cold. I got my cute little puppy snuggled up next to me. I don't want to get up. But if I can take myself from like a 2 to at least a 6 before I get into my day, I'm already winning, right? Like, I'm already at a better state than I was when I woke up because, I'll take Ryan's line. He always says it. When we wake up, we're tired, horny, lonely, hungry, all the things. And who's it all about? Us.
Yeah. Selfish AF, right?
So if I can get grateful, if I can start moving my body and kind of change that mindset, I'm already putting myself in a better, higher position in the day to
and you're
start.
Available to people to literally serve and do something for them, which is the name of the game.
Well, I wanted to touch on what you said about consistency and how, because there's days we don't freaking, like there are days where it is like, that phone is the hardest thing to pick up, and we are looking at each other like, can we just get through this day? But we know that once we take the first step, the first phone call, The second phone call is always easier.
Yeah.
The third phone call gets a little easier, and it's just having the steps. And like Ryan said, some days we hit 25 calls, some days we hit 50 calls, because if a meeting cancels, we know exactly what we do. If a meeting cancels on us, because
Yep.
meetings cancel all the time, 20 minutes prior, we get right on the phones.
Right.
And so we know exactly what we're doing when something kind of throws a wrench in our day. We're like, well, we just get back on the phones. Sometimes we hit 20 calls. Sometimes we have a day where we hit like 50 calls each. And then Brian's point, sometimes we hit 4. But we just stay in the small action of knowing we have to do some kind of outbound activities to get some kind of reaction.
For sure.
So it's just starting small. And if you don't make any calls or do any kind of outreach, start small. Start with like 5. Like have your number be 5 and just start there. And then you can always grow onto it. And that's where we really help with our agents with tactics. It's like start small and then let's see what works. Let's see what we course correct. But we can't scale up or scale down anything if we're not doing anything, right? And we hear it a lot. I'm sure you hear it too from me. Well, social media. And it's like, well, what do you post your cheeseburger on social media? And then you get like 500 people that are like, oh my gosh, I want to buy and sell a house. Like this
Or
is
I love your bikini post that you just did.
Yeah.
great thong photo. Like,
Love that booty.
Love that booty. Like,
I mean-
nice 6-pack in the mirror. Like, I see the guys at the gym taking
Yeah, yeah.
pictures and I'm like, who is that for? Like, what are you doing that for?
Well, and the level of friction will tell you how easy it is to do. Will tell you that everybody else is doing that.
Right.
So it's not easy to sit and consistently over weeks and years and over time make a consistent phone outreach. It's difficult. It's difficult to be consistent. So that means very, very few of your competitors are doing it. So I think you start with warm. Nobody goes from the couch to a marathon. You start with warm clients. Call your mom, call your escrow, call your title, call your lender. Talk to some people that aren't going to tell you to fuck off right away.
Yeah.
And then work your way into open house invites and then get to expireds down the road and divorces and those types of things. But go from the warm water out. It just makes sense. Like we all stretch before we work out, do the same thing in your and assign small numbers to 3, 4, 5 different categories, hit those numbers, be done. But when you're in it, be in it. When you're out of it, be out of it. So many people try to do 3 things at once and they suck at 3 things.
Yeah.
Instead of being amazing and focused in on one thing. And that's where we have to kind of tell our time where to go instead of wondering where our time went.
Right. I love that. I was actually I see entrepreneurs, because obviously I'm in that like entrepreneurial, space where I'm meeting tons of different people in, the real estate industry that are doing different things and have their hands in so many different avenues. And the one thing that made them money is the one thing that they're doing less of, and they're doing more of another thing that they're trying to do and grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because
So-
they want to see what they can push themselves to, right?
But in a negative sense. So like, let's say for example, like I'll use myself as an example. My success right now is flipping and wholesaling. So if all of a sudden I'm like, I want to go and do development, and I take my foot off the gas of flipping and wholesaling, but then I start going into development, I'm doing a year of development, my focus is off the business of flipping and wholesaling, what's going to happen to my flipping and wholesaling business?
Diluted, yeah.
Diluted. So for a lot of people who are in our space, like for you guys, they'll focus on things that aren't productive or not a good use of time. But if they go back to let's call it for the agent that goes back to all the sales or connections that they made, if they go back to the last 5 years of all those people, where did they get them from?
Yeah.
If
do
they
more
just
of that
did
shit.
more of that
That-
shit,
yeah.
and less of the other stuff.
We do it all the time. We
Yeah.
say, let's audit where your last 10 files came from. There's going to be a trend, and you're good at that, whatever that trend is. We need to do more of that.
Right.
Yeah, well, I want to hear kind of about your Ohio speak. Since you just were in Ohio speaking, what was that? Was that on fixing, flipping? What was your audience there?
Yeah. So I started coaching a year. It's been a year, a little over a year. And so it's in a big program. There's tons of people in this coaching program. And because I've been able to scale as fast as I have, I've been invited out twice now, once in January and then another time. So they fly me out and I come speak for an hour, kind of share my journey and things that I'm going through. I get to talk to, I think there was 65 different operations that do flipping and wholesaling, from people that have just done a couple deals to people who have a business that don't have consistency. And there's some that are really experienced, maybe just trying to get to more profitability or create more processes and systems to be more efficient in the business that they're doing. So I flew out, got to meet a ton of different business owners, and it's interesting because I actually have been wanting to talk about this. I was going to create a reel about this, but out of all the business owners that I met out there, and I got to share my journey. It was cool meeting a ton of people, but out of every single person that was in the room, there was fear. And it was fear of spending money, fear of taking the next step, fear of doing all of these things, which all related to confidence. Like a lot of them were solo entrepreneurs, right? Just starting. They wanted to start wholesaling or flipping, and they don't have like an acquisitions team or employees, right? And they're scared to spend money. But in today's market, especially in my industry, you have to spend money in order to make money. You have to. There's no cold calling anymore. Like you're not going to move the needle with doing that stuff. And one of the people in it, and it hit me really hard. He's like, yeah, I want to kind of start small with what I'm going to do. And I'm like, well, what if you start small and you don't get a deal for 6 months? What is that going to do for you? He's like, well, it's nothing. And I'm like, okay, well, so why don't you spend enough to where you know that you should get enough opportunities to at least get one deal in your first 30 days and have that as a plan for the next 3 months. And he kept talking in circles. And I'm like, do you just not have confidence in your ability? And he's like, no, I don't. And I'm like, well, you're in this room right now. You have the ability to talk to a ton of other business owners that do have the success and that can speak to that. But you need to have the confidence in yourself to be able to pick up the phones, to be able to know that you can convert these people, because spending money without confidence is going to equal negative results. And it's scary, I think, running a business and talking to a bunch of people who just don't have the confidence to take the next steps in their life. And I think I can relate it to anyone. I'm sure you guys can too.
Yeah.
But it's the norm, probably.
Yeah.
It's probably more like that than not.
Yeah.
And fear is a mother, right? It's
It's brutal.
It all comes
Fear
back to
can be
fear.
your biggest motivator, right?
Yeah, I mean, we listen to a lot of the same podcasts, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And what is it? 85% of the things that we're worried and anxious about don't even happen, and another 12%.
No, it's only like 3%, I think.
No, it's out of 100 things we are anxious of, 85 don't happen. 12 don't happen as bad as we thought they would happen in our mind. 3 actually are in alignment with our fears. So that's 1 out of 30, roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly 3%. So roll the dice, dude. Take the shot.
Yeah.
Here's one thing, like Michael Jordan says, I missed all the shots I didn't take.
Yeah.
Right? True story.
Yeah. Well, and I think going back to that, confidence stems with, like, that's scary. It's definitely a scary thing, but how do you know? And we have such a small mind because we don't want to get outside the comfort zone. So like, he said he wants to start small. Well, it's like, why would you want to start small? Like, why not think big already? And then we'll see how we can work it backwards. And so coming with that confidence and that like small mind, it's like, you gotta think big, bro. You gotta be like, hey, we got this shit. Yeah, it's scary, but that's gonna push you even further outside your comfort zone. And it's a little funny because it's kind of, we can laugh about it with our industry and stuff, but I was talking with an agent and he's like, I need more, I don't know my why anymore. Like, I need more motivation. And I was like, well, let's talk about it. And he's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm buying a Porsche. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
And he goes, because I know if I have that in my car, in my garage, I have to make that payment every month. And that's going to motivate me to get on the phone, get in more conversation. And I was like, hey, whatever sets your
If that works,
motivation,
right?
but talk about spending money. He's throwing a shit ton of money out because he's like, I need to make sure that I make that payment every month because that's going to be my new motivation to make sure I pay my bills.
Well, and I think too, like back to your students, it's like, it's not that deep. Like we have to have the beginner's mindset.
Yeah.
What's the beginner's mindset? Like I'm terrible at pickleball. It's a joke because I'm a beginner. So I go out there, I have a hell of a great
pretty
time.
decent.
I can get the ball over the net and stuff, but I see who's out there and they're like shredding, but I allow myself to fuck it up and figure it out. You know why? Because I'm a beginner.
Right.
So the same thing for this gentleman here who's getting started. Is he going to make some mistakes? Hell yeah. On the other side of all those little fuck up and figure it out moments are knowledge, experiential knowledge, and you start to get the hang of things. And then that's where confidence comes through, is those mini errors, those micro errors, those kept promises to yourself that you kept trudging through that. Those kept promises to yourself are confidence because you start to trust yourself, and then confidence comes from that. And then you take bigger swings, and then you connect,
Right.
and now you're on your way, right?
Yeah.
But without that, I mean, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. You've got to start.
Yeah. So to go back to the beginner's mindset, this is actually a funny story. I've never shared this before. When I was a realtor, and this is towards the end of when I was getting out of real estate, I would go and buy lotto tickets, and I was struggling at the time, and I would constantly spend my money. I would go out drinking all the time and spend my closing paycheck on booze and women, whatever else it was, and
Good times.
But so there was a time where I, of course, we've all struggled, but there was a time where I was struggling with money, and this was 2015, 2016. And I was making cold calls every single day. And so in order for me to make my cold calls, I would go and buy a lotto ticket every single day before I would go into the office. And I would think on the way into the office about everything, how my life would be different if I had money and if I was making money and I didn't care about money and I wasn't worried about my next deal. Then I would go in the office and make my cold calls. And it gave me the confidence to not give a fuck about what happened on the phone, whether or not someone told me to screw off or not screw off. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that lotto ticket was my sign of confidence every single day.
That's cool.
So super cool. Yeah.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
You know, we hear things like that, and I actually really appreciate hearing something like that because we've all gone through a struggle. We've all had that. I mean, Ryan knows I've had my struggles, and we've all gone, especially like, you know, the last 24 months in real estate has not been sunshine, and we all got a little spoiled with COVID
For sure.
it was all falling from the sky. And then after COVID, when I think it was like May 21, 22, the rates shot up and everybody was like, holy shit. And we still just had to show up. And there was moments where I looked at Ryan and I was like, do I need another job? Like, what are we gonna, like, how are we gonna get that? And it was just,
You have a job. Let's work it.
Yeah, we're gonna make the calls, we're gonna show up. And then now looking back on that, I'm like, I can't believe I even, like, that came out of my mouth. Like,
Right.
because there was a moment of scarcity of like, is this normal? Is this how it's going to be?
Congratulations, you're human.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
all have that.
Yeah.
What I love
Very
about
normal.
the lottery ticket story is it shows the power of the mind, right? It's all a game in the 5 inches between our ears because whether it was true or not, you had the belief that this was going to carry you through and it pushed you through the fear of making those calls.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people need to observe is what are you putting in here? We are what we eat, but also we are what we take in our mind. And it's like whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Which one is your mind going to dictate today? And you had a mind game that you played games with your mind that allowed you to, and enabled you to walk through a door and do the things you needed to do. People need to observe how do you talk to yourself? You know, what are you looking for the good? Or are you looking for the shit? Because you can find both in today's world, depending on what you're focused on. What lens do you have on? You know, that's why gratitude is a huge thing for us because we start with what's right. Like I've got a warm bed, I've got a food in my fridge, I've got a car that turns on when I want it to. I've got some stuff going my way. So when I leave the house with that lens on, I tend to see the opportunities, not just the obstacles. And I think many people wake up straight to screen, which is full of all the world's problems and yours, you know, right, individually. And so if I start my day with all the shit and all the problems and all the people yelling at me and all the cacophony of needs and all the just chaos, man, then I'm going to spend mostly likely the rest of my day seeing that in the world.
Right.
Because that's the lens I'm looking through. You know what I mean? That's what we mean by getting right in the mornings is getting our lens, getting our frame of mind in such a growth pattern and opportunity to see the opportunities in the obstacles because they're going to be there.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
what do you see it as? Do you see it as an opportunity or do you see it as a roadblock? That's all between your mind.
Right. So just to share, going back a little bit too, I think we're talking about mindset in your morning routine. I told you guys I was traveling for like the last 4 weeks, and after the speaking event, I came back, right? My anniversary with my wife. I still like jet lagged, exhausted, whatever it was, and then I had the speaking thing on that Tuesday here locally. So I had Ohio speaking, and then I had a speaking thing here, and I woke up the day after the second speaking thing here, and I had crippling anxiety, and almost felt depressed. And you're talking about waking up with gratitude and being reactive and looking at your phone and being out of my routine from doing all this traveling and not going to the gym consistently like I normally would, not eating healthy for the last couple of days, you know, having wine every night. That to me was a big reason of why I felt that way. And it wasn't because of anything. Like if I was to think about all the things that I was grateful for, why the fuck would I feel anxiety and depression?
Yeah.
Like there's literally no reason. Like I had
You have
no
mounting evidence of good.
absolutely no reason. And I kept going back to the thought of feeling like me being invited to these events and me speaking is a sign of like, how do I continue? How do I keep up with myself? Because I've gotten here so quickly. How do I continue on for the next couple of years and keep exceeding what my self's expectations are? But I would have never thought like that if I had my mental mindset right when it was, every morning I listen to an audiobook, right? Go to the gym, do my cardio, go on a run. If I was doing that and I didn't feel what I was feeling from traveling so much, I wouldn't even have had those thoughts in my mind.
Isn't
and
it
it's
crazy?
It's the power of routine.
Yeah.
Wasn't it crazy like how the thoughts in our minds can literally like give us anxiety, give us like I can sweat like just thinking things in my mind and like you think about like what if my life were this way and all these horrible things and you like start to get anxious and nervous. It's so crazy how your mind can literally make your body react onto things. It's wild.
Yeah,
But
Tony
you become a
Robbins talks about
ghost,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Like it almost like you see a ghost and you're just like, what do I do? How do I get past that? And it's just sometimes like for me, it's just like, give it a day or listen to a book and I'm good.
And, well, like Tony Robbins
shake off.
hits with me when he says we're the only animal on the planet that can think a thought and elevate our heart rate. And that's the power of the mind, right? And I just think that when you have routine and you're moving your body, you're moving your mind, you're moving your spirit, and you regulate those things, then you can approach any scenario with the mindset of positivity, looking for the growth and looking for the opportunity in it. But one little deviant or variation from your routine, that's how sensitive we are, And I think it's just, really, really having to stay focused on that.
When I think it's funny, I'll take what one of our coaches we listen to says, and he says, if you don't think that your mind can make your body have physical reactions, have you ever had a sexual thought? Like that gives our body instant reaction.
You said your mind can think of heart rate, and I'm like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like
Right?
and that's what our
All
business
kinds of
coach. That's straight
bodily
from-
responses to thoughts,
Yeah.
right? Weird.
And that's straight from our business coach that we have. And he said, like, if you don't think that your mind can make your body do things, like, think that thought
Try
for
that.
a second. Try that for a
and-
second.
I mean, and to your point too, because you've been on an accelerated pace of scaling, and it's just important, I think, to remember we have seasons of contraction and seasons of expansion, just like the law of the harvest, right? You have to plant the seed, you got to water it, the sun has to hit it, and you have to wait 3 seasons later until you can harvest it, right? And then the field has to go barren for a while, start all over in the spring. So that is true in the scaling of a business or just in the cyclical nature of a business. We can't be expanding all the time, just like the body, right? If you don't give your muscles time to recover, you're going to burn out. You're going to hurt something. Injury likelihood is through the roof. So you've got to give your business the same approach of seasons of expansion, seasons of contraction, get your bearings, backfill the necessary admin or the necessary systems to put in place to handle the load of all that's coming in your case, and then regroup and then recharge and re-expand even higher, right? So that you have to note the seasons and the cycles involved, and I think that goes for us too, right? There's times like right now we can beat our head against the wall through November and December and not make that much progress.
Right.
But if we do it May through August, we're going to crush, right? So seasons of expansion, seasons of contraction.
Yeah. What part of my speech was I said it's a sprint. It's a sprint, not a marathon.
Yeah.
In the beginning of your business.
In the beginning,
in the
yeah.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then
I love that
once
analogy.
you finish it, then it's like, okay, now how do we get the marathon pace going, right?
Right.
But it so is a sprint. Like in the beginning, it is you have to sprint.
If you're
it out.
awake, you're working.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning.
In the beginning. Yeah. That's why I think like you have to go at especially the start of a business, and people like I don't, you guys probably don't know numbers or anything like that, but I was there and I was sharing numbers and people were like, like deep breath, like how the fuck did you do that kind of thing? And even on Tuesday when I shared 2, they were like, and I didn't share numbers like revenue, but I shared amount of deals, and they're in shock because people who have been in this industry for 10 plus years still don't do the volume that I've done in the last 12 months. And the only reason why I've done it is because I've fucking sprinted and I've gone as fast as humanly possible. And I've made a ton of mistakes very, very quickly, but now I'm in a marathon pace, right? I've gone through the first year. I've done the growth. I know what's working, what's not working, where consistency lies. Now I know where I can kind of steady my pace. I can go from a 7-minute mile to a 10-minute mile, right? And then maybe third year I can go to a 12-minute mile, and I can slowly start scaling my pace of my mile or my marathon up a little bit. And I don't have to go as fast as what I once was in the beginning. But if people want to see really quick results, like for your agents listening, for anyone who's listening, they need to move fast as fuck.
Well, and they have to do it too. I think that's what you're like, that's like the main thing is having that execution part, and they have to do it all, and they have to do it, like have their system in place of doing the open houses, making the calls, like doing the outreach, doing the door knocking, doing everything as fast as humanly possible and getting all that shit done. Because then now you know what you like, what you don't like, what you can scale up, what you can take out. Like you said, you've found mistakes. You're like, oh, we don't need that. We can get rid of that. We can scale up over here. But how the hell would you have known if you wouldn't have gone through that and wouldn't have pushed through that quickness of being like, and it's kind of like we say, hire slow, fire fast. You know, same kind of thing. Like you have to do it fast because that's going to cut it off at the head and be done with it.
Well, and the flip side too is yes, to get off the tarmac, you've got to go full throttle, right?
Yeah,
the plane will
has
never
to.
leave the tarmac. But once you do reach cruising altitude, you've got to bring the throttle back some, or else what happens? You burn out, right? So finding that other side of balance is a quality problem because you've kind of made it at that point, right?
Sure.
But if you continue at that pace, you will burn yourself out. And I mean, we've seen it in the real estate. People that were very good friends and clients of ours built these empires and fizzled out, and now they're gone. Like, where'd they go?
How do you guys deal with burnout? I know we all deal with it, like from some small level or big level. Like for them fizzling out, that's a big level of burnout.
Yeah.
I've definitely had phases of my, a week or a month of burnout where I was like, do I, whatever industry it was, what's happening, why, and blaming myself, maybe being the victim during those time periods. But
we all have that.
Yeah, how do you?
We get out in front of it by regulating with self-care. We take it very important. It's very serious that we literally take our mornings back. Since COVID, I was one of the first in the office when we worked together, and the last to leave, and it's just not sustainable. So we reconfigured, and as much as you can, we build in things and pockets of self-care, whether it's working out, a nap, taking a walk, stepping away, built into the day. And then we have the ability to pull the ripcord. If somebody needs a mental health day, there's no explanation necessary on this team. We just, hey, I'm fucked today. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be back ready to go, or in a couple of days. And there's, because that happens.
It does.
Well, how often does it happen on this team?
Not very.
No,
because we have systems to regulate that.
Right.
But the other critical factor is when we're in, it's like a fuck yeah or a fuck no. We're 150% in or we're 150% out.
Right.
When she goes to Jamaica or St. Thomas or I'm in wherever I'm doing with my kids, I'm there and I'm 150% there. We forward calls to each other, and that's a big deal because when they're gone, when Katie and Haley are gone, I want them gone. Yeah. Like be enjoying it, be present in that moment because this is going to be here. And then vice versa. So that's one way we avoid burnout, I feel. I mean, your thoughts on that?
I mean, we definitely have our self-care pockets. I think going back to the morning routine, it just saves us so much. So that really is one of our North Stars on how we stay consistent and how we kind of get rid of the burnout. But we have our pockets, and next week, Thanksgiving week, no one's going to be freaking crushing the phones, working really hard. So we know we'll probably pull off a little bit next week. I have family coming in town, and I want to be with my family. I mean, I want to spend Thanksgiving with my family. And I always make the joke, I see people working, and they post oh, on the delivery table working, look at me.
Close the deal in the delivery room.
Really? I don't want to live my life like that. If I'm giving birth, I want to be giving birth. I want to be in that moment with my child.
Sure, I'm going to get that title open for you right now.
I mean, and I get
Push,
it.
honey.
I get it. There's the hustle culture, and we are all hustle mode. But when we are off, we have to be off.
Yeah.
Because this is always going. And I know for all of us in here, all entrepreneurs, this is always going. I have a journal next to my bed because I wake up at 2 a.m. and I'm like, brilliant idea. And I have to write it down. And 70% of the time I look at it in the morning and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? What was I doing on that one? But we all have to have that pocket of being able to shut off and shut it fully off. Yeah. And I was listening, Mel Robbins just did a great podcast and she was talking about being addicted to being busy. And I was listening to it and I was like, oh, it was hitting me a little bit. I definitely felt it because it's I always want to be doing something or I don't feel I feel like I'm lazy. I'm why am I sitting on my couch watching Netflix? Entrepreneurs don't watch Netflix. We can't be, but it's okay. We have those moments where we can shut it off.
Yeah.
And when Ryan's with his wife and his kids, I'm like, go be with your wife and kids. Go be on vacation. I handle all the phone calls. And like you said, vice versa. And when we're on vacation, we're freaking actually vacationing. Like, I'm not the lady that's on the laptop in the ocean, like, hold on, let me get this out for you real quick. It's like, I want to enjoy that time, as we all should enjoy that
come
time.
back rejuvenated. Meditation has been another game changer.
Has it?
The lost art of getting quiet and thinking. You know, our culture does not think. We are told what to think. We are overstimulated. These smart devices tell us everything we want to hear, right? Or don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But I think that even 5 minutes, I'm not a great meditator, but that's not the point. The only way you can screw up meditation is not doing it
Right.
or getting up and walking out.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I just had this hit me because I just heard something else I was listening to the other day, and it was like, when you're in line at the grocery store and there's like 4 people in front of us, what's our first thing we do? Like, we look at it, we're sitting there on our phones, right? And we're like waiting to move forward.
Dentist office.
And they said, try. And so this is going to be my challenge this week. Anytime you're at a waiting point, I'm going to try not to look at my phone, and just get through the grocery line, because it will show us how addicted we are to these screens. Where it's like, when we're just waiting in line for the grocery store and there's 3 people in front of us and we just instinctively
People
take out our
can't just
phone
sit
and just scroll.
quietly
So it's
with
about
their
just
thoughts.
sitting and not even don't even think about it. That's going to be my challenge.
I definitely want to take a hiatus, like for a week or some. I think during Thanksgiving, I may just delete at least like the apps, like social media apps, for a little bit and just take a little bit of a break. Because I do agree, because some of that stuff just like eats at you, man. And you just have to feel like you're keeping up with everyone. It always gives me more ideas. Like, I'm never someone who can relax.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard for me to do that. Like, I'm always on new things, something.
This thing never stops.
It
right?
doesn't. Yeah. And then like this podcast, I took a break for like 4 months, and my wife and I were at dinner, and she's like, dude, you left your job not because of flipping. You left your job because you couldn't record podcast episodes, and you stopped recording them after you left the job. Like, stop being a pussy and go do what was fun for you.
Good woman
I
right
love
there.
your wife.
And
I
I
love
was
her
like,
already.
you know what? Okay. Then the next week, or like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, when we're at dinner, and she's like, how many podcasts have you recorded in the last couple of weeks? And I'm like, well, I don't know, 6. She's like, wait, you've recorded 6 since we've had this conversation? She's like, what did you record like the year last? You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those conversations where it was like, when I did it, I was like, screw it, I'm going to do it big. And she's like, maybe you went too fast. And I'm like, well, you can't tell me to do something. If you're going to tell me that I should be doing something, I'm just going to do it how
It's
I.
100 or nothing.
Yeah.
100
we don't
miles an hour?
half-ass anything.
I know.
Like-
So it's just kind of funny in the way of thinking. I've tried, speaking of meditation, I've tried it. My therapist, I go to therapy. I haven't recently, but my therapist was telling me, she's like, she told me the same thing. She's like, you can't shut off. You don't know how to turn work off. She told me, she's like, you need to go, turn your phone on, do not disturb, and turn on like a Spotify playlist for meditation, and go just for 5 minutes. I don't care if you sit on the ground. I don't care if you lay in the bed, lay in your bed in the dark, just for 5 minutes, and try to shut it off. And I did try. I did like 2 weeks of silence. The problem is that then I'm thinking more, because I have a quiet brain, and I'm not looking at my phone, right, or anything else, but then it's giving me more ideas. And I'm laying there and I'm getting up and I'm like, oh shit, like now I got to go do all this shit that I just thought about.
Canvas and you're filling it.
Yeah.
I would suggest getting into nature, because if
Yeah.
you can get out into nature, you will find moments of awe, inspiring, because nature is crazy and beautiful. Whether it's the mountains or the ocean or the deserts or what have you, get out somewhere that makes you feel small.
Yeah.
And that
Running
will
has
get
been
you
that.
quiet. What's that?
Running has been that for me.
Yeah.
So
So
I-
the runner's high, that's very meditative.
Yeah.
That is moving meditation.
Yeah.
I was
That's
gonna
the
say,
thing.
Ryan runs like what, 90 miles a month?
I do every other day. I'm getting a little old, so the joints are a little
Yeah,
squirrely, but I run between 6 and 7 miles every other day. And
Nice.
I run the campsite right here off
Yep,
Poinsettia.
I saw you.
And freaking, it's a game changer
It
for
is.
me. And I either have a podcast or I just go and let the wind and just the noises of the ocean and stuff, and the view is just insane.
It's
I mean,
incredible.
you can't. I mean, they say that the ocean is a better reflection of a man in the mirror, because you see so much of yourself out in that bliss.
Yeah.
I love it there. And so same thing. So keep running.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Well, because I'm right there with you. Like I I've done the meditation. I try to get quiet, but I'm like, and then the thoughts come by and I hear the other voice in my head of like, just let the thought go. Let the thought go. And then I'm like, why are there 5 people in my head talking? Like,
It's just a cloud. Let the cloud go by.
Yeah.
And I get all the other ideas and I'm like, I'm trying not to think and now I'm thinking more.
Right.
So I'm right there with you. But to Ryan's point, like I try to walk my dog on the beach every morning. I take her on a 2-mile walk and I have like a podcast in, or sometimes have you ever just had your headphones in and don't have anything on and you just walk with them on?
Good.
For me, I do that and I'm like, okay, this is my quietness. This is where I'm able to like get quiet with myself. And so we all have those pockets, but I'm right there with you. Like I can't sit there on a pillow and like, because that's when I start thinking more. And then I'm like, holy shit, shut up.
The running has definitely been a game. I'll go on walk. The wife and I will go on walk. Well, time changes now, but we used to go on walks like at the end of the day, just to like catch up for her and I's time. But the running recently, and I made a goal for myself before. I want to say it was maybe like 2 months ago. I told myself, I was like, you know what, I want to start running, and I couldn't even run. And I go to the gym every day, and I lift and all this stuff, and I do cardio at the gym 30 minutes every day. But running to me was the last thing that I wanted to do. I was never good at running.
Same.
And I couldn't even run a mile without stopping 2 months ago. And now I can run a full 3 miles, probably 4 without, I always go like 3.5 is like kind of my distance.
Yeah.
But I can run it consistently without stopping. I do listen to music, but I'm still in my zone. It's not like I'm thinking about other stuff going on, and I'm just letting it. And I do go to the ocean. So I start at, Park 101. Okay. So just behind there's a parking lot by
in the village.
Yeah, in the village. So I park in the village, and then I go on to there all the way to Cannon and then back. That's 4 miles.
Right by Warm Waters.
Yeah. So like just probably before.
I go from where is it? Avenida Encinas up to Warm Waters.
Like where the Chandler's basically is where I saw you the last time.
Yeah. So I started in COVID 2020, May of 2020. I started running, and I was like you. I couldn't even get a mile, and I'd walk and run, and that now what is it? 4 years later.
Yeah.
It's 7 miles back and front without stopping, about 9-minute miles.
That's it's great.
I'm
but
happy.
now he's like, this meeting ends at 4:30. I'm going to be running in the dark.
Running in the dark sucks. Running in the dark sucks. That never changes. But
Can you do mornings?
not really, because
he does his Peloton
in
the mornings.
when you get to my age, Josh, not to sound like the old asshole in the room, your joints don't work properly for running. Peloton's very low impact, so I can do that.
Yeah.
But running in the morning sucks.
It's funny because I like at least 3 miles because my sweet spot's like 3 to 4. I can do that on an empty stomach where I feel a little lighter and I can get into a groove. What I've noticed if I do an afternoon run after I've eaten meals and things like that, and even if I eat super clean, I still don't feel the same on my run that I would when I'm on an empty stomach for whatever reason. But I was only doing when I was doing the morning runs. It was on the weekend when I could. During the week, it's too.
The running
too
is
hard.
because the asshole in your head is busy.
Yeah.
Because you're huffing and puffing, so you get so many creative things come to me in runs. Like I get some of my best ideas when I'm on a run, and like you'll find that as you keep doing it. But I really have loved the practice, and that's my meditation. So I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
Well, and for me, like you said, you lift. I love lifting. That's one of my things that I have my lift Tuesday and Thursday, and I have a very specific like workout regimen that I go to. But for me, like that's my quiet time too, because I can't think about anything else when I'm trying to lift something really heavy. Like I think it was yesterday was my PR. Oh, yeah. I PR'd at like 285 on a deadlift, and I was
Good
like,
for you.
But I'd
Sumo
never
or
done,
regular?
Regular
wow.
deadlift, and I'd never done
I'll never
that.
fight Haley. She'll kick my ass.
I'd break my back.
You have to be very intentional. Like there was a lot of like breathe,
Belt.
lat engagement. Like okay, my lats are pulled back. I feel it. I'm bending the bar. Like there was a lot of lot of setting up for that.
Nice.
But it's hard to think about all the other shit you have going on when you're focusing on trying to do something really hard like that, or just trying to focus on lifting
keeps
in
you
general.
occupied.
Yeah, the gym is like that for me as well. Yeah, I definitely get like that, but it's I do go early enough to where my phone doesn't ring.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
But it does. So it's like, but I've been very, and I know you guys are really, really good with, I'm sure you guys are good with this. I'm very protective of my time now.
Oh yeah.
And I can be very selective. Like, and I don't answer, and this is not, like, I don't get sales calls. I'm not on the phones anymore, literally at all. So whenever I get calls and I don't know the number that's coming in, I have no desire to answer it. And to me, if it's a problem, they'll send me a text or they'll leave a voicemail. And most of the time, if they leave a voicemail, I'm probably not checking it. But if they send a text and I know it's important, then I'll call them back.
Yeah.
But these days, I feel like I have to be so protective of my time, because if I let someone even take 20 minutes or 30 minutes of my time and it puts me in a different mood, or I have to be reactive or whatever, it just takes me right off the train tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
No, it's so true. We have to be so well, and because everybody's coming for our time, right? Our phones, our email, everything is coming for our time. So we have to be so protected of it. And I think it's important to realize for us, we know, like, when we say no to something, we're saying yes to other things. Like, yes to spending time with my dog and my family.
Right.
Yes for him being like, no, we say no to the happy hour at 6 o'clock at night because we want to be with our family. Like
Right.
and so we get very guarded on what we choose, where we go, what times we have. And that's why we're so regimented on our time blocking, because it allows us to have that freedom of saying no to certain things and being very protective of our time and who gets our time, right? Because there's a lot of energy drainers out there and vampire suckers of your
You
energy.
are who you hang with, right?
Mhm.
So do you want to be like your company?
Yeah.
Like, who are you spending time with? Because you're going to end up like the average of the 5 people you hang out with most, right? So are they propelling you to greatness, or are they dragging you back and creating self-doubt, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we are what we think about. We are who we spend time with. And show me where you spend your time, where you spend your money, and who you hang out with, and I'll tell you a lot about your life.
Yeah. I love
Crazy.
that. Love that.
Well, I think it was funny. We heard something the other day, and it was this person talking about hiring, and it was like, if this is HR compliant, but like looking like at how they look, like what's their fitness regimen? Do they look like they're in shape? Because if they look like they're in shape and a healthy person, they probably have good habits, probably take care of their stuff really well, and they're probably going to be a good employee. So I heard that, and I was like, oh. That is so true. Like, you can tell a lot just by looking at someone on how they take care of themselves.
Yep.
And it's about having the structure and routines. And gosh, if I thought about having routines at 21 and this kind of structure 10 years ago, I'd have been like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? Like,
I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this? They did. I just couldn't hear them.
I know you're talking about like finding your why. Fuck, for the longest time when I was 21, like getting into the industry, I'm like, my why is to go be able to afford beer at the bar and go find some random girl to hook up with. You know,
Exactly.
like
I want hot
My
chicks and
why-
fast cars.
Yeah,
man.
I was
That's my
like-
why.
And it's so crazy, like when we think about it, because remember being young and like having you've talked about your first job at SeaWorld, my first job at Submarina, and we got paid and made like $300, and it was like, hell yeah, I'm buying the bottles tonight. Like, I am balling, like, sacks on me. Like, but now looking back at it, like, that was probably some of the best times because
Yeah.
we were so less stressed about what we had going on. And it just now changes on, like, our new why. Like, now my why isn't being able to buy the bottles at the bar. Like, I have new whys on where I want my future going. And my dreams are, I have really big goals that I have set for myself. And so for my why, it's really like making sure that I get what I want. And like, it's setting up my needs and where I want to go. And so I think it's important. So many people of us put our whys of like, oh, the family and this. But like, when it comes down to it, your why should be like what it means to you.
Well, and Haley knows that you become and what you are inside, and it manifests itself that level on your exterior,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, and that's what I think a lot of people miss is they start with the externals, and I'm going to find love on the external stuff, the stuff, right? The cars, the
Whatever it
spouse,
is,
the zip code, the whatever. And really, I mean, we have everything we need already inside of us, and we have to build that up, and then it'll correlate with the externals over time. As you build yourself up, as within, so without. It's the law of correspondence. The person you become, that will be reflected to you in what is manifested physically around you.
Yeah.
So I think in your relationships and your possessions and everything, So I just think if we focus on building ourselves up and being the best version of ourselves, everything else falls into place.
Yeah. Love that. Speaking of what you said, $300 used to go a lot further back then. So it's working at Submarina, you could
covers one of my bills.
You could fill up your tank, and you could probably go out for an entire weekend on $300.
Yeah.
And maybe you may pay some of the rent.
Yeah,
Or you don't rent that.
and get the weed for the week. Like it was set, you know.
exactly.
It was like $300.
Now
I was like, this will last me my full 2 weeks. I'm good. I'm good. Now looking back, it's like, oh, I mean, you know, more money, more problems. I'm like $300. I don't even know if that covers one of my bills anymore.
So what's next with the coaching thing for you? I mean, I know we do some coaching in the title side and sales side.
I know I was going to ask you guys about that a little bit. So people keep asking me what's next too, and I don't know. I got here so quickly. You know, people, I'm getting asked like, you know, what's your plans for the next 5 years? And I've gotten to this level. Just I didn't expect it as fast as it has happened.
Congrats.
And so and I'm saying this like this is not me being like cocky or anything.
Well, you put in the work.
I literally
You put
just
in the
don't
work.
know like what the answer to that question is.
More will be revealed, right?
Yeah. So we're working on. Obviously, I'm still very, very focused on our core business right now. I am mixing in some other avenues for next year. So some development stuff. I'm going to try to just maybe do a couple development deals a year moving forward. So next year, I'm actually. You and I think we'll talk about who it is after this, but we have I think a mutual friend that you know, and I'll share his name after we get off this podcast, but he's been very influential to ideas and growth and just opening my mindset to different opportunities. And it's been huge because you are who you hang out with.
Yeah.
And I think certain times you are who you talk to. Right. I think nowadays, as we get older, I don't hang out with a lot of people very often anymore. Like I hang out with people who are coming on a podcast or working together, or they're in the office, or, you know, some type of co-worker or some other peer in the industry. But my conversations on the phone, like when I'm having conversations, when I am on the phone, when I am talking to people, it's with people who truly inspire me and want me to do better. And so getting around those types of people now in my life has been great because it shows a path of what other people have done and where I can take things. So, ultimately next year, if we do the same numbers that we did this year, in terms of like the flipping and wholesaling stuff, I would be ecstatic. Taking myself maybe a little bit more out of the business because I've still been very much in the business. I don't want to be completely out. I still love like my realtor relationships and the deals that I get through that, but on more of the internal side, I want to replace myself in some of the operations stuff. So, but I think if I can, go into next year as more of a marathon instead of a sprint, being a little bit more leaner. Now we know what things are working. So I'm not just like spending crazy amounts of money
at the wall and see
well,
what works.
everything worked. It's just what was more profitable. And so like I've had KPIs throughout this entire 12 months of the year with every single lead channel that I've had in the business. And if it's basically not getting me a 3x ROI, it's basically out. So I'm putting more money into the things that are 3x plus and less money or no money into the things that aren't profitable.
The fact that you know that puts you ahead of most of your competition. And I admire the fact that you're getting into relationships with people. Like it's when you do anything new, it's like walking into a dark room, right?
Yeah.
And what you're basically doing is gaining access to somebody who's in that room with the lights on, has furnished the place, and has experiential knowledge in that front, right? Mm-hmm. So putting yourself in rooms with those types of people that can teach you, or in relationships with those types of people that are like 20 steps down the path from where you're at, it just accelerates your learning curve so aggressively, right? So, I mean, and finding those types of people, those harder and harder because they get like us. Like they don't want to take fewer calls, fewer lunches. They don't do all the things anymore. So you keep seeking those people out. That's exactly what I do.
It has to be a reciprocal relationship, right?
It really
like you
does.
have to, there had to have been a reason that I was providing enough value for someone else to provide value to me.
Yep.
And I think that's important for people who are trying to get into those deeper, better relationships with bigger and better people that are 20 steps down the road, is what value can you provide to them that will move the needle for them? And a lot of things, like I think, all of us, when I was in the industry with you guys, but I think any industry can use that. Like when you're having a conversation or you meet someone or connect with someone that is at a higher level, like, hey, what can I do for you? Right. And find out what those things are. And it may not be anything substantial, but you may be able to fill that hole in their business, just like with what we used to do or what I used to do, what you guys do now, you know, in anyone's business in order to get their business. And for me, it's just relationships. Like that's the things that I love is I love building really good relationships with higher level people. So I can pave the way to either where they're at or a level of some type of where they're at. Maybe not the same avenue, but like,
somebody figured it out.
Something,
different trajectories.
When I love being in those kinds of rooms and being like pretty much the dumbest person in the room, because it shows you how much opportunity is really out there. And it opens your eyes so much more to be like, look, I'm doing like this much. I could be doing that. Like there's so much opportunity out there. And that's what I love getting in rooms like that, because you hear what people are doing. You hear what drives them, how they've gotten to where they're at and where they're going and what their next steps are. And you're just like, holy shit, there's so much opportunity out there. And I think we get so small-minded and we get so stuck in our little bubble. And then when we get surrounded with people like that and they just blow our lids off, it's like, holy shit, there's so much more out there that we can put ourselves in, like, there's so much more in our gas tank that we don't realize. And then we get around these people and it's like, oh shit, I thought I was running on empty. I got way more in the tank.
Well, it's like I always go through my notes from my closing table or different masterminds we went through when I'm plateauing. You know, I'm feeling burnt or I'm feeling like I just don't have the creative juices. And go to one of those times in your life when you've been in that scenario where you either have a mentorship that is opening doors for you and just crazy creation going on in the brain, or just go back through your notes from a time when you went to one of those seminars, and it really helps.
Yeah. I think these types of conversations and podcasts, like there's not a lot of time, like talk about the golf course, right? Like you can go sit on go play golf for 4.5 hours with someone and build a quality relationship, but you're not talking like this, right? It's your bro talking. Oh, you remember that fish story of the girl that I dated 10 years ago, whatever it was, or look at the cart girls.
I think we need to talk about that offline.
But you're not having like a high level conversation, regardless of like what level of life they're on.
Yeah.
I think it opens your mind to being creative and communicating with people at a different level. And it's something special and like something that you can, I've definitely learned even from people who like aren't doing what I'm doing, or, it's not in terms of like success levels or anything like that, but still with the wisdom or the things that they've gone through, or maybe trauma that I'm like, man, I totally align with that.
Yeah.
And then you become closer with those people too, which is kind of cool. So yeah.
It's a really good medium. It's a good platform you have here.
Yeah. Well, and I love having those kind of conversations. Because when you're having those like like I have friends that I've had for 15, 20 years. And sometimes I hang out with them and I'm like, man, you're the same person you were, right? Yeah. Like, but then when you're with your other people that inspire you or like change your, like I have one group of friends that they live out in Florida and they're fitness coaches and they're really well known in the fitness world. And he saw this guy who has like over 1 million followers, and he was like training for like doing poses for a bodybuilding or some kind of competition. And he just sent him a DM and was like, bro, you can't go on stage looking like that. And the guy actually responded and was like, what do you mean? And he was able to start getting in a dialogue with him, started coaching him. That guy opened his doors to so many of his coaches and people that he's working with. And now my group of friends over there is freaking crushing it because they keep getting in these higher doors and these higher opportunities of people that have just crushed things in life. And they keep getting these doors open just by a single DM of like offering help to somebody who he didn't think that he was going to take his help.
He took the step.
Yeah.
He did the thing.
Me, it's always been paid rooms. That's always done that. Me paying for someone's time and getting me closer with them, and then doing what they've told me to do to get to where they expected me to go. And then the respect is there because then I took the action to get there, which a lot of why I go to those Ohio things is the people that are there.
Yeah.
They run that and they brought me in and I did what they told me to do and I catapulted very far. So now I'm a massive testimonial for them.
Yeah.
But now like sitting down at dinner with these people where, they're doing 60 million plus in revenue throughout all their businesses. And they've done that in a 3-year period where now they're doing 60 million a year, where before 3 years ago, they were only doing 3.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, like watching those people and being able to just have conversations or literally sitting there and not saying a word and just listening to like the conversations that are going on with their team and the people around, and just being a fly on the wall makes you just realize like what someone has in them to get to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think you're playing big, and then you hang out with some of those people. You're like, dude, what the heck do I do with all my time?
But it's crazy because when it's, you talked about your metrics and your numbers, right? And kudos to you guys, right? Like you guys are the top in San Diego County. And, we won't talk about income, but like, obviously I worked with you, and the fact that the numbers that you do and those same metrics and the phone calls and the meetings, it's not that crazy for someone to start doing exactly what you just said and start making the phone calls and getting to that place. But you have to have the consistency. But we know so many lazy fucking people in that space, in any industry, right?
Any industry, yeah.
Right.
Any
So,
industry.
Well, and it's proof positive, and then proof positive. Like she's, I have a legacy thing
Yeah.
with her where this business will transfer eventually to my team.
Yeah.
And she just has come like you did. You went, you did what they said, you executed.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. The rubber has to meet the road, dude.
Right.
It has to. She came, she said, "What do I do? Here's what we do." She did it. 7 years later, she's one of the top reps in the county.
Right.
It's not. There's no accidents, right? I mean, success leaves clues. You just have to do the shit.
Yeah.
And even when you don't want to, even on rainy days, even in good markets, even in bad markets, you have to know what works and then do those things that work. Because when you don't work, it doesn't work.
right. Love that.
When being around those people, you hear different things and you're like, oh shit, like that's a genius idea. Like I would love to implement that. And then look at you took what they were saying, implemented it, and now you're on those stages speaking.
Yeah.
Like that's huge, Josh.
Yeah.
That's
It's kind
incredible.
of simple, right? There is a
It's not.
playbook.
It's not
It's not
complicated.
crazy.
No,
It's
it's not
The
complicated.
problem is in here, I find all the reasons why I just instead of just fucking doing it. I could have done it by the time I get around to doing it with this thing.
Yeah. It's crazy too. Like once you get to a certain level, like or a certain point, you're not working harder.
You're working smarter.
Yeah.
You're just actually working.
You're executing things at a higher level that's doing different stuff. But like, and you can delegate and do different things. But like, I'm not working harder than I was at any period of my life. I'm just working differently.
You have more leverage points,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, yeah, I guess money helps with that too. But yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate you guys coming on. Any like closing thoughts? I know we were like over an hour for sure.
That was so good.
This
I'm-
was a lot of fun. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
It's an honor to be on with you,
Yeah.
and we love what you're doing here.
Thanks,
so
man.
thanks for making
Appreciate
us a part of it.
I love how it all comes full circle.
It does.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So,
Love it.
thank you, Josh, for having us on.
Of course. Thanks everyone for watching The Modern Mindset. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.
Good
Nice.
job.
Oh, good job,
That
guys.
was awesome. I wasn't